Welcome to another episode of the Engaged Parish podcast presented by eCatholic. I'm your host, Mike Josephs, and today we're diving into something that hits at the heart of every man's upward calling in Jesus Christ: strength, discipline, and holiness. Our guest knows what it means to battle in the trenches, both on the field and in the spiritual life. John Chick is a former NFL and CFL defensive lineman, a Grey Cup champion, husband, and father of 13. After retiring from football, he's turned his passion for discipline and brotherhood into a powerful Catholic movement, Act F8, Activate. I kind of like that. Very cool. The Iron Saint Method, a fitness and accountability ministry helping men reclaim their God-given strength, purpose, and identity in Christ. John, welcome to the show.
God bless you, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being
Pleasure to be here. Yes.
Thank you for being here. Let's start at the beginning because you have quite the career. So for those who might not know your story, tell us a bit about your journey through football and how your Catholic faith played a role in that season of your life.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Wyoming, grew up, hard nights, Friday night football and fell in love with it, and so I did. I had a passion to continue that and had an opportunity to play at Utah State University, which was my first time, you're living your faith on your own. And at Utah State University at the time, the only Catholic church there was the Newman Center. So it was 100 or less, but it became very tight knit. That was your family outside of the everyday, and where I really fell in love with my faith. I always loved it. I grew up in a very faith-filled home, but being away from home and going through trials and tribulations, I've lived with type 1 diabetes and just different other things that it's always great to have the home. And met my wife as a freshman. We dated all through. She was born and raised Mormon, but a better Catholic than I was already. And we fell in love with the Catholic faith together. Went through OCIA, RCIA with her at the time. And from there, it took us all over. Started with a cup of coffee at the Houston Texans. Was there about 6 months. And every time, and especially after that first leap, it was, where is the Catholic Church? That's where we're going to live, And so that is kind of what led us. And it wasn't because I'm a saint or anything like that. It's just the home I grew up in, knowing that that's what always kept me straight and narrow. And that's the family life I desired. And so we already had a child there. I got released, ended up playing 3 years in the Canadian Football League in Saskatchewan. And talk about, it is a very interesting community, but it is, it's a farmland, up there, very rich farmland, but it has more Catholic churches than most countries in that area. A lot of old ones. It's got a history of Ukrainian Catholic, and French Catholic, a lot of Catholicism there. So we didn't have an excuse to not find a Catholic church there, but found a good one early that called home, joined the Knights. But it was always that family away from the chaos that football can bring, and transient life where you don't know anybody is, you always got to know people pretty quick that way. And again, not going to say I was a saint. I'm still not a saint, but it was frequenting the confessional and making sure we made Mass was always a priority, and it never steered us wrong. It blessed us through both good times and bad. And that being said, is there were a lot isolation. One of my pain points, and we'll get to it here in the Act F8, was living in all these different places. And what you read in that first church in the book of Acts is the communal life, right? They devoted themselves to the teaching of the apostles, to the breaking of the bread, to the communal life, and to the prayers. And as our family expanded, that communal life comes harder because it's not like we live right next to the church. And so every in and out is not so easy. And And so that's kind of always been a wound, I guess, more or less there, is whether it was on my football teams or just in normal everyday living, having other Catholic men being able to be accountable to and hold me accountable, and help me grow, help me rise. And so that was the experience. But it was very blessed to get to live my faith on my Canadian teams. Both, experiences were great. Might have had some born Catholics, but didn't know any real practicing Catholics. Actually, I had uh, 1.5 season where I was actually a teammate with a practicing Catholic, good dude, who's actually in discernment for this right now. So I'm super excited for that. But and then down here south on the NFL side, it was very blessed to the teams provided a priest. We had mass. They would travel with the team, and that was cool. So at least had uh, some communion in that. Yeah.
That's beautiful that your Catholic faith kind of stuck with you, even when you played at the professional level, both in Canada and down here in the NFL. And I want to get back to that and what that faith journey looked like, because I'm sure it was a journey. But tell us a little bit more. I feel like it's so many young boys' dreams. It certainly was my dream to play at the professional level of a
Yeah.
sport. What was it like being in the NFL?
It's a great question because it feels like a lifetime ago. It feels like a different life, than what I live now. Um, there is so much good in the fact that what I love about it, and again, leads me to the act of faith, is there's always a goal front and center and a built-in fraternity that's working towards that goal. And so you knew what you had to do to get there. Every day made sense. There was a day one, day two, day three routine. Then you're kind of getting rehabbed, prepped so that you can go and execute in the game. The study, the ice tub, the weight room, the camaraderie. All of those things are what I live for. I loved that. Now, that being said, being a faithful, it's pretty colorful conversations at times, and it's a men's environment.
Right.
And so another pain point is, you know, not only myself, but a lot of the men I looked up to live in a secular world, working a secular job where Christ is forced to the sideline. And that was something through the years that no matter what, I'm done with this. Christ is going to be at the center of everything that I do. And not that he wasn't for me personally, but from a business standpoint, is a house divided cannot stand.
Mm.
And you would see that on different clubs. I had an experience in 2007. We won a Grey Cup championship, and our head coach was a believer. He preached belief being this action word, that if you believe truly that we're going to be in the Grey Cup and up there, it's November, that will change what you do because it's an action word. It's not Lord, Lord. It is you will be here early. You will leave late. You will get in the ice tub. You will do all of these things. And that culture that we were a blue collar team. No all stars on that club. But there was something that, because of conviction, that allowed us to play higher and better than ourselves. And going 12-6, not an unbelievable record, but enough to earn a playoff spot. Never once had we had the respect of the media or anything like that. The last Grey Cup they had won, that was 2007, was 1989.
Mm.
And we had to go on the road for the playoffs. And each time, again, you knew somehow we were going to win. Most of those games, even the ones we won that year, we were losing at some point. But there was something greater than self that was active there that allowed us to finish where we did and win a championship. And that season always stuck with me, of what ordinary people can do when they believe. And that was an action word, that it rises me above myself. And so those are the moments. Unfortunately, that was my rookie year. And so you're spoiled as a rookie. You expect that every year, which really makes it disappointing when you don't repeat it every year. And so I got to win 2 of them, play in 3 of them. And that was awesome. I was one point, I was nominated 3 times for most outstanding defensive player. Took that award once, and I love the pursuit of greatness. I truly believe that we are created in the image and likeness of greatness, to return to greatness and to glorify God in our body. And that was the gift he gave me, but also the drive to do it. And so I loved getting to put it all out there. Reckless abandonment, is word you say, is whatever happens, happens. And there were injury-filled seasons, which were opportunities to grow in the Lord. So 2008 was an injury-filled season for me. And there was a guy named Tim Gray came and spoke at a parish that I was up there, who worked with the Great Adventure Bible Timeline. And in a day, or little retreat, he gave glimpses of this Bible timeline. Oh my gosh, how rich is that scripture, So I couldn't wait. Man, I got some time on my hands now, and I got to get in this Bible study, which we then carried with us to every club I went to. We did the Great Adventure Bible Timeline, and 90% of those people were not Catholics. So we got to help teach scriptures to others, and I'm still learning. I've forgotten more than I've learned, but too many hits to the head.
I love to, what you kind of, excuse me, honed in on around discipline, because that clearly has been important to you through your life. And it's going to be part of our conversation later with where the trajectory of your life ended up going even after football. I am sort of curious. So you mentioned you met your wife your freshman year, right, of college.
Yes.
So I'm guessing you guys were probably married shortly after graduation, and you're now father to 13. So as your family grew after you were married, how did you balance the intensity of pro football with your vocation? Did that become tough as time went on? I mean, you mentioned not having that sense of home, of community, which I'm sure can make that tough.
Trust, hope, and I like that word, reckless abandon. In faith, I didn't grow up in necessarily a pro-life advocate home. They lived it, but I didn't know that stuff. Okay, and so it was a learning experience for us, and then getting into marriage and what that looked like. Holy cow, this means something. This is so anti-cultural, and so it was just something we practiced and were open to in our life. And so that didn't mean that we never practiced, up in Canada, it was called Serena. No, I can't remember. It's had different names wherever we go. But and how much freedom is in that, and not having to worry about how we're going to provide. No, it was never easy. Whether it was 1, 2, 3 is probably the hardest, because it's when you first get outnumbered, and still 2 versus 1. After that, it just gets louder. And so it was never easy, but I had a wife who was fully supportive. We were fully in the marriage. She supported me in my career. I supported her as mother of our children, and it was important for me to be as present as possible when possible. But there's seasons of feast and famine in that kind of life, and so you work it out together. And it was sacrifice. It was hard. It was important to us. Not everyone does this, and we probably spent way too much money doing it. But I grew up in a home where that wasn't important. My dad didn't work for a ton of money because his presence in the home was more important.
Yes.
And so it was important for me that wherever we were playing, that my family was with me. And so we only had one season, only because of a time timing issue of when our children would be born, that we didn't spend the whole season together. And I will never regret that ever, no matter what it costs to rent a house back home, rent a house up there, and move all your stuff. It was every second worth it, that experience. So yeah, there is. I've told you most of the good things of it, but there is difficulties for anyone considering and having those dreams. Is work, no matter what work is, becomes work. Doesn't mean you don't love it, but it is not a family-friendly, necessarily, environment. Some clubs did it better than others, but I'd say the more kids you have, the more looked down you are upon. Um, and there's some of that cultural things, and especially today, that it would have been very hard, to play. My
Yeah,
last year
absolutely.
was a very tough decision, uh, because I was still under contract, but it was getting more. I was probably getting old enough where it hurt bad enough physically, but the secular things that were creeping in, it just I was kind of past that, and I think that happens with a lot of guys in age, and that you finally get tired of some of the nonsense, that can come with the cool stuff that you get to do, and so we made that decision, and it was a huge leap of faith because at that time I had no other plan than Iron Will Fitness. I had started JC CrossFit with a club up there, and 6 months afterwards, I had been released and signed with another club. And so that was already hard, but that one was called JC CrossFit. Even though those are my initials, it was always after the big guy.
Yep.
And then, that was the plan. Is I didn't have a client base, but I knew what I wanted to do.
And you've definitely found a way to, really interweave well faith and the discipline. You talk so much about the discipline that you loved, the discipline that probably got you to the professional level for football. And you found a way to bring that to Catholic men in a transformative and new way. And I think that's a great transition point to what inspired you to launch Act F8, Act of Eight. I really like the play on words
Yeah,
there.
sure.
Act of Faith. Yeah, it's really I love that. So first of all, maybe what inspired you with the name, and then what inspired you to launch this movement for Catholic men, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So I started Iron Will Fitness, and that was coined to me at one point, and anything that is good about me, I've always attributed, is my trying to take after the Lord, and it's His iron will. So, iron will is to me the virtue of pursuing virtue, all virtues. His will, not my will, type of living. Right? Iron sharpens iron. I just always love that mentality. In fact, this week our virtue of the week is magnanimity. It's just trying to be the best version of myself, and not for vainglory, but because I am mimicking the one who did it best. And so, with that, I already had that program, mission based. Ultimately, what leads me into prison ministry is we do monthly missions. Was doing that in Canada in the works of mercy. We cultivate virtue each week, live in the Word, and all of this work we're doing is not for vanity's sake, but so that I can show up better in my vocation as husband, as father, brother, son, friend, and neighbor, as servant. And and so the Act F8 as branching and trying. I had tried to get on the online space at one point, and I did for a while. Um, and then I got involved in this ministry, and we moved, and had two more children. So it kind of went on the shelf for a little bit. But as thinking about it is, I want to pay it forward. I grew up in a house that my father had his family involved in the works of mercy. That's where I was transformed. In a long football career, got very many cool community experiences, but it's not the same as a work of mercy. And I was starving for it. And I couldn't wait to get back into that because Yes, I love going to church. I love adoration. I love all these things. But the encounter with Christ comes in serving someone else. And I missed that. And so not only that is I know the busyness of the world, and not everyone's, a lot of people's excuse for not doing something is busyness. But man, if you can find a way past that and realize everyone is busy and get out of your comfort zone, you'll be transformed, And so the Act F8 is, like you said, but also activate, be an activated Catholic. Acts 1:8 is the action verse of Scripture. So you will receive the power of the Holy Spirit, and you will be my witnesses. Where are we witness? When we are serving our neighbor. And so that's where that comes from. And then 8 weeks is what we're working in. A lot of the virtues, F's fit in there, 8 F's. So it all came together, but it all resonates towards becoming the iron saint. And, iron sharpening iron is brotherhood. So that is a big component of what we do is we are intentional about brotherhood and developing and being brothers to others in the faith. And I hope that I help explain that, at least that name. And then through that name, we have 5 pillars of putting on the armor of God. And that armor is aligning our vision. Scripture tells us a man without vision will perish. Renewal of the mind. Scripture tells us where transformation happens. Mastering the body. We are a temple of the Holy Spirit. Ordering fraternity. Iron sharpens iron. And reclaiming freedom in Christ, body, mind, and spirit. And so, just a lot of thought went into how to develop this mostly. The why, my passion was always fitness. I was a brittle 14-year-old diabetic when I was diagnosed. But I had this heart and desire for greatness, and could have been a death sentence. And I had this from day one is, no, I know I can overcome this through Christ who strengthens me. And he's always shown me the way and provided the way. And so I loved how to discipline. In fact, some of the crosses we get, I don't know that the Lord didn't give me diabetes, but he sure used it for good, because I don't know I would have had near the discipline I had in my life without that cross. And so it helped me to know how to overcome those obstacles of the body, physically, spiritually, and mentally. And so I lost where I was going there for a minute. So you can get me back on track.
Oh, yeah, that was a beautiful, that example that you have in your own life is a beautiful way to show how we can look at our crosses through the eyes of Christ and see it as ways that help us spiritually and even just in our day-to-day lives. You mentioned gaining self-discipline.
Yep.
That's what we're supposed to do with our crosses, not sit around and mope over them, but use them in the way that Christ wants us to. So you have a beautiful example of that in your own life. And again, I just love this concept and that you're sharing this with men. At a practical level, what does a typical day or week look for someone going through this program? And then maybe also another point of clarification, is this for men and women, or is this just for men?
It's just for men. I would love at some point to partner with a woman who has this desire for women, but I don't want to pretend for a second to know what a Catholic woman wants or needs. It's two different areas. Remind me of your question once again.
What does a typical day or week look like? Yeah.
Each day is mission. So we call it mission because, like the championship, I approach it as I am a head football coach. I know we're on the championship team, but we have to show up. The brothers have to show up. And so that's the approach that we take it, because the promise is strength, yes. Clarity, yes. Purpose, yes. But brotherhood. And you can't be a brother if you're not showing up. And so there is a fraternal side to the app that when you receive the mission, that mission is involved in some spiritual formation. It might be a video. It might be just written format, but it's scripture that's aligned with our virtue of the week, our mission of the month, and then some theology of the body. Most people approach fitness from I got to do something I don't want to do to treat something that I don't see rightly, and most people don't see their body rightly. And so it's helping them see that you are a gift. Theology of the body tells us you are a gift. You are the first gospel before you ever speak. And most times, most people never get to hear your voice, and what you exude, your presence is the gospel. Is it proclaiming the gospel? And so, but not just that, it's, touches on theology of the body, the mission, and all those kind of things. And then there are some question prompts, and some of them are personal, goal oriented, right? We're always moving towards a destination, right? And the eternal destination, yes, but what is the 56-day goal? And guess what? That's not a landing spot. That's preparing you for what's next. What is that? And so each day is a little bit of habit stacking. There is some tracking. Are you praying your morning offering, your nightly examine? But also, are you consuming enough water and those kind of things? And then you'll get a workout of the day, which we call our active prayer. So a workout of the day is, again, what the world calls it. We're not of the world. We're in, right? And the catechism tells us singing is a prayer times 2. Why is that? It's because I'm glorifying God with the gift he gave me to sing. And so it's a prayer times 2. How much more, the theology of the body tells us, is our body the gift, a gift. And so it's an active prayer, which stands for inspired actions dedicated to intentions greater than self. So part of this brotherhood is, yes, we are going to battle with these guys, but all my sweat, all this work is committed to someone else. And not just in the brotherhood, but then outside towards the works of mercy that we're offering. And so when scripture tells us, pray without ceasing, I don't know that it means being on your knees 24/7. Not that that's a bad thing, but activate, right? Is calling us into action, that we be an answer to the prayer and to other people's prayers. And so this is all an offering, our workout of the day. And when you start to see it that way, it totally changes how you approach fitness and why you get up at 5 a.m. or whatever time it is you do it, because nobody wants to do that, but it's a lot easier when you have the right why.
You mentioned earlier, your own seeking of for community in your professional career in football, and also how community and seeing the witness of your parents was so important. So how do you interweave brotherhood and community in supporting this? Because I know for a lot of men, fitness isn't easy, and a lot of times when you try to do it alone, you end up failing. So what does that look like in the program?
Yeah, awesome. So we do offer 2 live sessions a week. One is a live training hour. One is a live brotherhood hour. Just how'd the missions go? What was good last week? Here's the mission ahead. That kind of stuff. Praying together, and then the daily mission, the brotherhood. So within that same, you're going to a day, okay, and on that day, you might get, all right, what is your 56-day why? To what part of the Iron Saints rule of life stood out to you most? Or it might be what part of the workout today did you offer to a brother? So something like that, and it gives you a prompt. And from there, you're taking a picture of that prompt, or you might be taking a picture from your workout. But then you're going to the fraternity, the brotherhood portion of and you're posting that. And when you post that, you're also tagging a couple brothers. One that, hey, you've been uplifted by in the last couple of days that you want to thank to rise, and someone you want to challenge. Hey, man, I haven't heard from you in a bit. And that way It is being intentional about cultivating the brotherhood so that in the course of 8 weeks, you get to know your brothers. And so at another level is, yeah, we're all a team. All right, 15 to 20 men. Well, we're keeping it nice and tight. They're a team, but each of them are going to be partnered with a shields mate. And then halfway through, they're going to have another shields mate as another layer of getting to know your brother that you're going to war with. And this is a war.
It
As
is.
you mentioned,
Yeah.
the spiritual warfare. We are in battle, and we are preparing for the battle and for our longevity that we might serve those we're called to serve.
I'm sure this is critical to the program as well. I mean, anytime we get fitness involved, vanity can start slipping in. And I know you often say fitness isn't about vanity, it's about holiness. You touched on this earlier, but can you unpack that a little bit?
Yes. We all used to know if we go into a gym, we're going to see a certain type of dress, going to hear a certain type of music. And if you've been on any sport clubs, it gets even worse. So I'm intentional with putting Christ-centered music on. Some guys don't like the beat on some of that. To me, it's about why I'm doing it. You are what you repeatedly do begins you are what you repeatedly think. And I used to talk with teammates about this. When you listen to all that stuff before you go out there, yeah, it's going to get you hyped for 2 or 3 seconds, but then you're going to get punched in the mouth. And what's going to keep you going? It ain't all that talk that's going to help you keep going. It's who you serve. So, sorry about that. Um, Remind me the question again.
Yeah, no, you were just mentioning how the type
Oh,
of
yes.
dress we put on, the music we listen to,
Yep.
how that can make that really is short lived and also can distract us from really our main goal, which is serving Christ and serving
Right.
others.
Right. And so, uh, you, the way you phrased it, remind me. You said it's not about vanity. It
Right.
is
It's not about vanity, it's about holiness.
holiness. Yes. So if I'm just going there to bench 320 pounds or 400 pounds, or for what? So I have a that benchmark, so that I look a certain way for who? Aren't you married? Or are you? So there's a number of once you start asking the hard questions, what's it for? But when you're intentional about what it's for, it's not for vanity's sake or that I can bench 300 pounds or whatever. It's so that I can increase my. So the definition of fitness uh, is increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains. All right. So am I increasing my capacity to work, to serve, to love? Because it is in showing up that we show our love. It is in doing where we get to do those things. And if I'm not, then I'm going the other way. A lot of people talk. I had coaches even say, stay the same, maintain during this. You don't maintain. If you're getting weaker during the season, which a lot of players do, they want to take care of their body. They don't want to hit the heavy stuff when it's in season. Guess what? Playoffs are going to come. All those teams, everyone's equally beat up. Who stayed strong or even got stronger? And that's where I would highlight my season is in the playoffs, because I knew how important it was that old lineman I'm going against all week, all year long, who came punching me in the mouth early in the season, he's pudding come playoffs because he hasn't been maintaining the same way because practice is hard and games are hard. And I get it, but we don't stay the same. We're either going down or we're going this way. And that's football, that's sports talk, but that's in life. And we are in the game. St. Paul reminds us, I love St. Paul's language. Run so as to win the imperishable crown.
Let's get practical and a little bit raw here. Why do you think, and you've been doing this for a while now, why do you think so many men struggle with staying consistent, both physically and spiritually?
Uh, Conviction is one,
Hmm.
and lack of conviction is because of all the distraction we see around us, right? Is we are in a very pleasure filled society. So it's harder. It is painful. And we're in a society that avoids those things like the plague. And so, we used to say where the church goes, the society goes. And somehow I feel like in these modern times, we've kind of gone the way of society rather than being the deal. And so, again, that's why it's in my heart, because of my own pain points and experiences of both the lack of communal life, but what you see day in and day out is we are called to be set apart. We are called to be holy, right? Is what that means, and that is body, mind, and spirit, to glorify God in that. And so, um, there is more than I could ever say on the why we aren't. There's distraction, social media, our fast food, everything, right? Fast food diet, fast food phone, fast food pleasure, whatever it might be, that's where we're at. And so, um, I think if we could make these things disappear, that that would
Three
be
quarters of the battle right there.
that would be three-quarters of the battle, right? Man, I never have hoped for some sort of a law like that, but wouldn't that be cool if all of a sudden it just disappeared? I would solve all of the world's problems, I think, right there. But that's one of many distractions, and then there's the work, right? You got two parents supporting a home more often than not, and by the time you're done with a work day, you're tired. You want to be with the kiddos, and so it is a lot of division in our time, and so that's where you got to be intentional with it. And so I'll share with you one of my biggest secrets to that is, okay, I know that my first 10% belongs to God, right? We know the story of Cain and Abel, both gave, but my best 10%, that's in the morning, that's in the evening. If we divide our day up, if we get 7 hours of sleep, that's 1 point. That's an hour and 42 minutes a day. That is at least 10% that I have to give to the Lord. Well, shoot, where do I find an hour and 42 minutes? Well, how about in an active prayer? Not just your workout, but when I'm intentional about my work being an hour of prayer and I'm offering it for those needs, I can kill two birds with one stone. I can be a good steward of what the Lord has given me and glorify Him in offering it for others. And that's where you can stack habits, is by being intentional with putting Christ at the center. And so when you are going to a mundane workout, I'm telling you, I've lost conviction many times because I tried when I moved out here. I'm in a rural community with where I didn't know anybody when we moved here, so I could serve in the ministry. I thought it'd be great to join the local club, to be social, but it's all filled with mirrors and certain dress and certain clothes, and it's like, how does no one, again, this is where I started back in the day, is we're so missing the mark, and that's not what it's about. And so I think there's a lot of factors that play into that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said too, just infusing everything we do with prayer, or breaking out our day and actually finding the time to dedicate to have prayer, to have prayer time. But, it's what St. Paul says, pray without ceasing. You mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily mean, and for most people, doesn't mean being on your knees all day praying. But if we can put God first and give God, like you said, that best 10%, I think it becomes easier to infuse it in other things in our lives where we can still glorify God through everything we're doing, even our workouts, as you've pointed out and as your program points out.
Yep. Yep.
I'm curious. We talked a lot about reclaiming masculine virtues, things like discipline, even the physical element of making sure that we're maximizing our energy to serve others, to protect others. To you, what does authentic Catholic manhood look like, or what would you like it to look like in today's culture?
Well, I think it's uncomfortable almost to say anymore because of how divided we are. So even in this cohort of men, it's awesome to watch the struggle of people being intentionally fraternal, right? But we're divided that way. So I do think it's community. Iron sharpens iron.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do believe that it is hard work, it is discipline, it is sacrifice. Now, that doesn't mean always, right? I don't know if you've read the book Eat Fast Feast, and it's based on historical Catholicism, and there are seasons of fasting, yes, but there's also seasons of plenty, and we feast, and that's why the church has infused our days and weeks and months with seasons of feasting as well. But those are the things that in temperance help us to overcome some of our shortcomings, and is doing hard things. It's not easy to be temperate. It's not easy. A lot of the virtues are not easy, and that's why we name them and talk about ways of how we cultivate them, because it's what overcomes our vice. And I don't know that our culture's much different than any other as far as vice, but I know that we are filled with them, and it happens. I understand it. We've all been there, but there are ways in which to overcome those, through prayer, yes, through fasting, yes, but through other disciplines as well. And fitness is a mortification. Is if you are a 9 to 5 worker and you're trying to fast doing that, it's pretty hard. It's not prudent to be doing that when you got to be physically alert. So how can I do it? And then I'm going to be sitting at a desk how many of those hours, or eating what kind of food, So what's another mortification I can do? Another discipline. And that's where that training comes in. But yeah, to answer your question, if I were to define it, carrying one another's burdens.
Hmm.
Jesus gave us the answer when James and John's mom asked him to sit on his right and his left. And who is greatest in heaven? The servant. And so I have leaps and bounds to do. I'm not telling you I've perfected that either, but I know that the experiences I've had with the Lord were in service to others and where I was transformed. And so that's what I believe. And the amount of men I am surrounded with in that ministry, in prison ministry, gives me a lot of hope of, and some of the young folks that are showing up in that ministry, gives me a lot of hope for that masculinity, is going and doing the hard things, even though I don't have time to do it, is being intentional about it.
Yeah. I really think you hit the nail on the head. Is being servants to others. You're exactly right. Jesus gave us the answer. And as men, all these things we do should be not in service to ourselves, but in service to others. So mortifying ourselves, growing in virtue, praying daily, making a habit of that. And again, these are all things that you preach in your program. And that leads me to my next question, which is, do you have any powerful transformations that have come from the 56-day mission that you can share with us?
Yes. I mean, we've just finished our first cohort, but I had one fella who had done this with me back in 2020, and got some great results. So I had a couple fellas that break the 300 mark that really got some powerful results. I had a priest, talk. I think it was week 3. Says I'm 8 pounds down already.
Wow.
These kind of things. But one of my favorite texts was a non-Catholic guy who played. He was one of my college quarterbacks, and we've stayed somewhat connected over the years, at least on social and things like that. And I know he's had a conversion to the Lord. And I see the things, and I invited him to this. And this guy was a stud during the deal. But I mean, he sent me a text out of the blue one day just saying, I can't believe what the prehab has done for me and the stretching, along with, like, he does some martial arts. It has just improved me in all areas. But then he goes on and says, I have never been this close to the Lord.
Wow.
And to hear that kind of stuff. And then, so it's those kind of comments. And then you see dudes who you think, from your perspective, are already living the life, as far the Catholic manhood life. I got two dudes in there that have 7+ children that have led the way the entire time, as far as they have every excuse not to be there, between work, but then to see their testimonials is just saying, man, I'm kind of getting up there in age, haven't done movements like this in years because of injuries and things like that. And when I'm following the program, I'm doing things I haven't done for a long time, and have the confidence to do them. And now I don't want to miss a workout. The value of stretching, that they talk about. So I think every person's gotten different results in different ways.
Hmm.
A couple of our guys are probably a little less sociable by nature. And so the fraternity side was out of their comfort zone. Praying publicly now amongst the brotherhood, to be a brotherhood, to have a brotherhood for those guys that are out in those places where they feel isolated, has been huge. Not only for me, but watching what is done in each of these guys. And so I would say some of the things that people experience is, I think we can all think that I'm the only one going through this. And what each of these men one by one have found out is, holy cow, that dude's going through that, and he's still doing this and showing up here and this, and they're all going through something. And then you realize, yes, we all have a very unique situation. Never want to take away from that. But suffering isn't unique. And we all are dealing with it. And am I offering it, or am I letting it bring me down? And to see these guys rise in the midst of those struggles and help their brothers rise is what I would say is the biggest testimonial of shared burdens.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, a few times, iron sharpens iron, and that's exactly what's happening. It seems like with the cohorts and the men that are going through this, seeing other in a vulnerable way when men share about their own struggles, it can make you not feel so isolated. And I know too, for a lot of Catholic men in our culture, we talked about this earlier, it can just be isolating living out your faith, when the culture is so against what we believe and what we know is right. And so it's great that this brotherhood and community is helping to build men up on all those different levels. So if there's a man listening right now who feels just completely spiritually dry or physically out of shape, or maybe both, where do you recommend he starts?
With the act of faith. I truly do. I do approach it if you're willing to show up, because there are brothers dependent on you. So if you know that you can't be there, then it's probably not the right time. If you know you can't do that. But if you can trade off some things, whether that's your social media time, something where I can show up 15 minutes a day for a brother, the workouts are tailored to meet you where you're at. Again, our active prayers. So your fitness isn't going to be the same as mine or Jim or Bob's, right? It's meeting you where you're at, and it's very intentional about where you commodify, and it's not even being tracked every day as far as how much of the workout you do, because it is meant to be self-paced. It's meant to meet you where you're at so that it can become a lifestyle for you, not so you're doing my workout or so-and-so's workout, because we're all going to have little different needs, what we're trying to take care of. So I would definitely say to start with this, because you are going to be surrounded with men that are coming from all different places, different pain points, and are there because they want to be a better version of themselves. And that's the kind of men you want to be around, is uh, who are vulnerable and want to rise, um, because they know they haven't arrived. So
And I know for men that want to take the next step and get involved with you, you have a website, right? That
we
they
do.
can go
Yep.
to and reach out. I think we can pull that up as well. Do you want to mention that website real quick?
Yeah, ironsaints.fit. And it's just a little blurb that will give you a little bit more explanation, like what I've done here today. And if you do want to book a call, there's an opportunity there to schedule a call with me, just so I can get to know if where you're at and if this is the right season, because we'll have multiple cohorts throughout the year, and it is important. I want to be transparent. I had several of the folks that went through here I knew, in fact, have trained with before, and in is a charitable way, I had to ask a few to leave, only because I am acting as the head coach. The promise I'm delivering is one of the promises is brotherhood. And if you aren't able to show up, I can't deliver on that promise, and we can't win the championship.
Mm.
So it may not be the right season, and that's okay. And then there will be opportunities within the app for subscription based training if you're not ready for the mission.
Got it. And I'm so glad you keep emphasizing that, because it's so important in community and brotherhood. If you don't show up, it's not truly a community. I mean, you can't be taking more than you plan to give. And so I'm really glad that you're so you hammer that home, and even mention, it might not be the right time in every man's life to take on the program, but for those who feel like it is, to discern and reach out and
Right.
join a cohort. We also have a lot of parishes, as you can imagine, that listen to the Engaged Parish podcast. Do you, at this point, have any ways for Catholic parishes or men's groups to sort of integrate active faith in the Iron Saint method into their ministries?
Yes, absolutely. And I've begun that reach out myself. So again, it would be best to visit the site and just and connect a call that way. Um, it will be on the App Store here before the new year, so people can go there too and see other program offerings and that. But always best to, I would say, connect with me, just so you can ask the hard questions and and decide if it is the right thing for you, because it may not be. But yeah, my hope is we had one priest on this. Uh, yes, I want the parish level, but it's important for men to have a pastor in the journey with us. They not only are our spiritual fathers, but they are the brothers. They are the most isolated, and they're pulled in 1,000 directions. And so we need and want to take care of our priests as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah, it's so important for priests to remember that. And because they're pulled in so many directions, it's easy for that to slip. So, yes, for any priests listening out there, definitely take a look at this program and discern if it's a right fit for you. It sounds like the community aspect can also be very helpful for priests that go through it. I have a couple last questions before we
Yes.
wrap up. First of all, what do you have any personal prayer routines or spiritual practices that keep you grounded in your day to day?
Yes. And I think, like many, I probably go through seasons of better or worse, but I always start off with the morning offering. And then at least 5 of those days of the week, I have active prayer. So before we start our training, we come together. We have an intention board with the men I train with in person, and we offer those intentions up. And then it might be more personal prayer, but on a regular basis, either the memoir or the Our Father or something like that. So memoir is always big. I run at least 2 days a week and walk 2 days a week. And in that, I generally pray the memoir and I always do the rosary, but so personal prayer, memoir, and I'm trying to think. There's one other prayer that I generally say prior to the rosary, and then I offer intentions for my rosary. So I don't love to run. I never have. I'm a big guy. It hurts. But that is one of my favorite active prayers, because even if it's not Tuesday or Friday, generally I'll go to the sorrowful mysteries when I'm running, because it is a way for me to unite all my anxieties and worries about the outside world to the cross, to the passion of Christ. And so that is by far my favorite prayer. And then on those days that I'm not running, we do family rosary. So that is our favorite time. Yeah, I got a rosary board behind me here, but we have a family rosary board that all the kiddos' rosaries are on, and that tradition is one of my favorite things. It's just them getting the rosary and watching that whole scene, and then finding their spot where you're going to pray the rosary and all those things. So I work on my examen. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, but I try to do an examen, and then Divine Mercy. I get a reminder every day at 3:00, but I don't always hit the Divine Mercy. So
I
those
love
are
that.
my devotions, but there are several. My running time. I love going to the church and I love adoration. Don't get me wrong, but my running time is my most powerful prayer time.
Yeah, I feel like there is something about being in motion. I mean, all these things are connected, right? So
Right.
the more fit we are, the more clear our minds tend to be. So
Yeah.
when I'm sure when you're running and you just kind of hit that stride, you hit that runner's high, it's easier to focus in some ways.
Yeah.
And again, it goes to what you were saying earlier. It's like kill two birds with one stone. You're mortifying your body and getting a beautiful prayer in the rosary
Yeah.
completed. Like that's a win-win in my book.
It's vulnerable. So things come out of you, out of your mind, and your suffering that it just is unitive, right? When we talk about the theology of the body, there's the purgative, the illuminative, and the unitive phase of our faith. And I'm telling you, in that moment, I feel more unitive than almost any other.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, so it is unique.
And so, what's your hopes for this movement in the next few years as you get more cohorts underway?
I would love to say that it's to get everyone in ship shape and all that kind of stuff. It's as much of a pain point for me. I had squats this morning. I have never looked forward to squatting a day in my life.
I'm right there with you.
Same with running, right? Now I love the result, so I do it, but I don't love the doing. My hope is for activation, is that I see it transfer into people feeling good and better about themselves, so that they are willing, if because it requires vulnerability, and when you're vulnerable there, then I can get out of my comfort zone and go into uh, the soup kitchen or to uh, one of the works of mercy. And so even though it's a secular movie, one of my favorites is Pay It Forward. That concept of from this and being intentional about doing a work of mercy every month, a different work of mercy every month, that it gets people active in those works of mercy. Because it's one thing to say it and we talk about it, and I think a lot of us think that we do it, but when you're more intentional about it, that was my pain point. Year and a half, I had started this. I hadn't been into a prison. I didn't know anybody doing it, and then had to get vulnerable, and I was transformed. And so that pay it forward to me is, man, when you experience Christ in those ways, to see what that'll be. But it's through our fitness and our ability and our energy and our confidence, all those things come from being fit, body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Makes us
so
more
that's,
attractive too, I think,
yeah,
you talked about that earlier, but it makes us more attractive as we look to evangelize others. And it's so true. It's like we look at the corporal and the spiritual works of mercy, and sometimes they can seem like a burden, or to your point, we sort of trick ourselves and say, oh, we're doing this in certain ways. And probably maybe that's true. But when we actually do them, to your point, they actually are very fulfilling, and we end up getting something from that as
oh my
well,
goodness.
which
Or,
is just funny. I mean, that's kind of
yep,
how our faith works. It's like when
yep,
we actually do what we're asked to do, our lives are better.
yep, yep.
I want to mention again where folks can go, and if there's anywhere else that people can reach out to you. Again, we have Iron Saints. That's saints plural .fit. IronSaints.fit. Anywhere else on social media that you typically post, or anywhere else
I
folks
do.
can
Yeah,
find
I'm
you?
on social. I'm trying to get mostly moved over to YouTube, but at that website there, they can find my social accounts. So just keep it easy. But yeah, I'm on YouTube and Facebook, Twitter, all this stuff. I don't want to be on any of it, but
I
I,
know.
I just,
Sometimes it's the
my hope
necessary
is
evil.
as this community continues to rise, is that's people's hangout and social. So
Yeah, and you can build some level of authentic community there as well. So I can totally see how that interweaves into the program. So
right.
once again, for our listeners, if you're ready to reclaim your faith, your fitness, and your focus, make sure you go and check out John's ministry at ironsaints.fit. And I also want to mention, if you're listening and you have an idea for an episode of the Engaged Parish podcast, we want to hear it. We want to hear your feedback, your suggestions, anything. You can send that to producer at engagedparishpodcast.com. Again, producer at engagedparishpodcast.com. Thanks again, John. Thanks for your witness. Thanks for your leadership. Thanks for serving Catholic men and reminding us that holiness and strength aren't at odds. Really appreciate your time today.
Mike, God bless you. I appreciate your time. And man, it was a great set of questions, man. I appreciate you. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you. This was a great episode. Thanks again for your time. God bless you and your ministry.
all right, brother. God bless.
God bless.